On the 2nd and 3rd of December 1967, the world woke up to unbelievable medical news that for the first time, the heart of a dead human being was transplanted in a dying human being. And I was part of the team that did the world's first heart transplant. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a dying patient. There was no other medical or surgical treatment possible. And we knew from our experience with cardiac surgery, with kidney transplants, and our research that this was possible. And on that night, we did, and we walked into history. We didn't think much of this procedure. I was offered $1 million by Time magazine for one photo. And the photo was for a man lying for the first time in the history on the operating table, alive without a heart. And a dead person's heart was taken and put into his heart, and he survived. Unfortunately, we never claimed that $1 million. We didn't even think it significant enough to take one photo. We had no idea what this will develop. What it really meant was that the human beings of the world accepted this as an unbelievable event, an emotional event, because the heart was perceived as the emotion of life, the emotion of death. To us, it didn't mean much. Now, why did it become such a historical event? Very easy to explain. You go tonight home to the one you love, and you say, my heart belongs to you. How would it go if you say, my kidney belongs to you? You say, my heart is true. How would it go if you say, my large bowel is true? It was the heart that made the history. We were criticized very severely. Too early, and when our first patient died 18 days later, the criticism was most likely confirmed. But ladies and gentlemen, our 5th patient lived for 15 years. Our 8th patient lived for 23 years. And today, heart transplant is routine surgery all over the world. Why did it succeed? Because it was morally right. We had a patient that was dying, and it was our duty as doctors to do everything possible to save that patient's life and give him a new being. Ladies and gentlemen, as you sit here, 70% of you one day will develop a disease as a result of atherosclerosis and cancer. Atherosclerosis, the disease of the artery of the body. Cancer, the diseases of the cells of the body. Atherosclerosis blocks the arteries and causes heart attack, stroke, and many other conditions. It's fascinating that only the human being develops atherosclerosis, no other animal. People say, isn't it strange that the human being develops atherosclerosis? No, not at all. Have you ever seen a pig smoke? Or an elephant having a mixed grill? It's only the human being with kind of eating habits that results in these diseases. I was part of a breakthrough in modern medicine where we have been able to tremendous procedures. 1 out of every 4 women will develop heart disease, and 1 out of every 3 men. 1 out of every 3 people will develop cancer one day, and 8 out of every 100 people will be diagnosed with a stroke. And you in your wonderful profession must realize that our patients are your policyholders. And what you tell them and the advice you give them will be absolutely vital to their future. So, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you and I respect you as part of the health team. Because when you sit down with a client, you say to him that you will give him advice on a policy that will give him money when he needs it most. When does it need it most? When something goes wrong with his health. Because none of these policies will pay out if there's not a health condition. None of these policies will pay out without a doctor and treatment. And the policies that you advise must realize the need that your client will have when one day he's diagnosed. Because you see, modern medicine has changed things completely. Modern medicine has changed things completely. And let me show you just a short example. This is a human heart. Normal heart. The heart that's beating in your body 100,000 times by tomorrow this time and pump blood to each cell in your body. Unfortunately, these hearts become diseased, and you get one heart attack after another. And this muscle gets destroyed, and here you see a muscle of a heart that's completely destroyed. This person couldn't breathe properly. He couldn't brush his teeth. He could hardly eat. Now, I often ask people, how long did this man live after his heart was removed? The answer is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. This was our 8th heart transplantation, and he lived for 23 years after a heart transplant. 30 years after his first heart attack, and 7 years after both his legs were amputated. That was how he lived. You'll agree, modern medicine at its best, space age medicine. But did you notice I talked in years? I talked in quantity of life. And as a doctor, I went out around the world and sort of talked about my results, and I boasted that my patients will survive for 5 years and 6 years. And they did. And they did. If you have a heart attack today, the good news is that 50% will survive 13 years and longer. Cancer, 50% will survive 5 years and longer. And 77% of stroke patients will survive, again in years. Now, this man came to us over 30 years for follow-ups. He never complained, never, about his health condition. He never complained about it. He was happy to be alive, if you think of the alternative. Marius Barnard, at his 80th birthday, said, they asked him, how does it feel to be 80? He said, if you think of the alternative, I'm feeling very well today. That is what he felt. But when he came to see us, he complained of one thing and one thing only. What was that? Money. His health was destroyed over that period of time. He couldn't continue working. He had to sell his house and move into a small apartment. He had a small car. He lost his business.